Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar we have Nicole Somes, and today's webinar will be on the power of influence, the emotional intelligence skills required to get people to agree with your point of view. So today's webinar we're going to have a Q&A towards the end, so please feel free to send in your questions throughout the webinar. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Nicole.
Thank you, Paul. So I am Nicole Somes, and I am on a mission to help people become stronger, braver, and more confident at influencing. Whether it's pitching a business idea to potential investors, persuading a client to agree to your proposal, or persuading your partner to take the bins out, we all influence others every day. Yet more often than not, we don't realize we're doing it. We often overlook these as just everyday interactions. I believe that influencing lies at the core of what it takes to be successful in whatever you do. After all, if you don't ask, then you shouldn't expect to get. Unfortunately, though, asking can be seen as salesy, and people very often associate selling with negative behaviors like being pushy, aggressive, or even untrustworthy. But selling is human. We do it every day, whatever our walk of life. And key to success is to draw on your influencing skills to get people to agree with your point of view. Strong influencers persuade others to come around to their way of thinking by building value in the other person's mind and by motivating them on an emotional level. People buy people. I know it's a cliche, but you know what? Cliches are cliches because they're true. It's far, far easier to agree with someone or to do something for someone if you like and you trust them. Take a moment to reflect on someone who has influenced you over your lifetime. It could be positively or negatively. Maybe it's a teacher from school, a friend, or a boss who's influenced you to enrich your life in some way. It's interesting to recall how you felt if you were ever pressured by them into making a decision. I'm sure there are examples of when you've had to say yes reluctantly. This is probably where those negative selling perceptions are likely to have come from. As Maya Angelou famously said, "You won't remember what someone said or did, but you sure will remember how they made you feel." So that's why my definition of influencing, put simply, is the ability to leverage your emotional intelligence to communicate effectively so that you make it easy for the other person to say yes. There are some fundamentals to being strong at influencing, and all of them are rooted in emotional intelligence. It's absolutely key to become aware of yourself and others. Then you need to have the necessary social and communications skills to build relationships, and importantly, listen and understand where the other person is coming from. And then you need to control and manage yourself throughout the influencing conversation, always setting appropriate levels of ambition and optimism for the situation you're in. And to even hope of achieving influencing success, you should focus on the other person's needs. Think about what's in it for them and why they should agree with you. Do you know what? I believe that most people like to be led, so long as their needs have been taken into consideration. So during the webinar, I'm going to cover the following topics to help you deliver powerful influencing messages so that people can agree with your point of view. Understanding your own communication style, how to harness your social skills to consciously build strong relationships, some thoughts on how to deliver a compelling case or story, and some tips on how to stay in control as you deliver. You don't have to be a great influencer to start, but to be great at influencing, you need to start. And with that in mind, let's get started with some more about EQ, emotional intelligence, and why it's so pivotal to influencing. In a nutshell, emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize and manage your emotions and those of others. We all have EQ, emotional intelligence capability, Some of it is innate. In fact, your emotional intelligence levels will peak up until about the age of about 55 until they start declining again. And we're often more likely to spot the lack of it than its presence. But unlike your IQ, which is pretty fixed, if you understand the core components of EQ, you can learn how to build these so-called soft skills, incorrectly termed, by the way. They are much harder to learn than technical or hard skills. So in more detail, that's self-awareness. This is about becoming aware of yourself and aware of others. It is the cornerstone of emotional intelligence. If you don't know yourself, then you will find it harder to understand others. Social skills. That is about having the necessary social and communication skills to build relationships. Ambition. This is the skill of being able to set appropriate levels of ambition and optimism for the influencing situation you're in. And finally, self-management. Disregard this one at your peril. This is all about your ability to control and manage yourself throughout the influencing conversation. It is actually a myth that women are naturally more emotionally intelligent than men. Statistics show that we are marginally better at just one of these sub-building blocks, and that's empathy, which sits within social skills. So often, empathy is confused with sympathy, by the way. Empathy is your capacity to understand the other person, whereas sympathy is feeling sorry for them. Just to bring emotional intelligence to life, a really good example is to think about a manager who is trying to influence and motivate their team. The manager needs to draw on their social skills, in particular the empathy, to understand the specific needs of each member of their team. They have to have the self-awareness to recognize how their style might impact others, and the self-control and self-confidence to establish credibility with their team. And the ambition would play a part in sort of challenging their team members to reach new heights. So emotional intelligence really is the key to success. Consider the most influential people in the world today. Whether you like them or loathe them, they all do share the ability to inspire and motivate others to take action and embrace change. See, influencing is such a core life skill, and strong influencers are front-footed and have the confidence to assert themselves. And if you can do this with appropriate confidence, then you will perform better. In order to demonstrate you're emotionally intelligent, you need to be able to communicate with emotional intelligence. Try and think of your communication as the vehicle for your EQ. It is so crucial to strike the right balance between appearing confident. If you are arrogant, people won't want to buy into your idea. And if you're subservient, they may well think, you don't even believe your idea, so I'm not going to be convinced either. And confidence is contagious. So as an influencer, you must believe in your own ability to make change happen in order to win over the other person's heart and mind. Now, relationships really do help us deliver results, and therefore they are pivotal in influencing. Because, as I said before, people like doing business with people they like, and more often than not, with people that are like them. The better your relationship skills, the stronger you will become at influencing. This quickly becomes a sort of virtuous circle which reduces tension and conflict, making influencing seem more natural and seamless. Look at the diagram on the slide I've just put up on the screen. It comes from Steve Radcliffe and is called a relationship pyramid. if you visualize, it really helps visualize, I think, that relationships are the foundation of everything. The bigger that bottom part of the pyramid, the relationship purple bar, the bigger the ideas, the more opportunities there are, the more actions that take place, the more the results are realized. If the relationship bar is small or weak, the chances of achieving all of those other things is diminished. So if you think of somebody now that you've got a really good relationship at work with, it's probably easier to get things done with them. If you now think of somebody that you don't have a good relationship with, or even a bad relationship with, how does it feel trying to influence them? Results can only really come from relationships that are big enough to get the job done. So you've got to invest time and energy in the bottom part of the pyramid. So I think I've gone on enough that communication lies at the heart of what it takes to be a strong influencer. Nonetheless, so many of us underestimate the importance of understanding that people have different communication styles. So in order to be understood and to have your influencing story understood, you really should first seek to understand others. But I would say the better you know yourself, the easier it is for you to understand others. So you need to use your emotional intelligence to help you recognize different communication styles and the effect that they will have on the conversation. It is important to be able to make a connection with the other person or people that you want to influence. And this will help you fast track finding that common ground and a way of forging really good connections. So by recognizing, respecting, and responding appropriately to different communication style preferences, you will be able to build stronger and more meaningful relationships. When you look at the diagram on this slide, remember that people are predictably different. All of us and all the people I'm talking to on the webinar this afternoon will have a higher or lower preference for being either more outgoing or more reserved, and for being either more task orientated or more people focused. The outgoing types are faster paced and tend to get energy from others, whereas more reserved people are more likely to be measured and self-sufficient. And people with a task preference will probably crave processes and plans and numbers and figures, whereas those with more of a people preference will seek relationships and sharing. So there are lots and lots of tools that can help you work out different personality and communication preferences. And in my experience, the easiest model to use to help you understand these preferences is called DISC. And it was first outlined by a psychologist called Dr. William Marston in his book, Emotions of Normal People, written in 1929. So it really has stood the test of time in my book. The model gives us a really deep understanding of behavioural preferences, and we can use these insights to help us better understand ourselves and learn how to better relate to others. So the DISC model on the screen is designed to help you recognise these different communication styles. On its own, it's worth noting that this is just data and insight. But by using your emotional intelligence and respecting others for their communication style and responding appropriately, you'll be able to build stronger relationships more quickly. This is where your EQ comes to the forefront. By demonstrating that you can see things from others' perspectives, you'll build a better relationship and make that shift from telling into selling. This will help ensure that the other person doesn't feel maybe manipulated or outmaneuvered during the influencing conversation. So in more detail, we have to start with recognizing the different preferences. And as I describe them, reflect on what resonates for you and for the people you work closely with or your family and friends. It's also worth considering we can all do all of these things. I am describing preferences. So let's start with the D style, dominant and driven. They are the outgoing and task-focused people. Think of people who communicate in a demanding and a direct manner. They are motivated by power and are compelled to win and get results. As someone who is decisive and determined, their goal is likely to be wanting to be in control, and their most typical way of communicating is to tell others what to do. You should be able to spot a D-type person by their steady eye contact and their straight talking. They are very businesslike and really won't want to engage in that chit-chat. In fact, they're more likely to interrupt you as a way of sort of exerting their control. They are fueled by results, so the prospect of failing is likely to worry them. And as such, they are likely to not prefer indecision and can sometimes be a little bit impatient. This makes them not so great at listening, and they believe that their way is it's their way or the highway. So they don't tend to worry about upsetting someone else's feelings. The I style, though, is more influencing and persuading. They are also outgoing, but are people orientated. These people are interactive and inspirational. They are motivated by praise and recognition. They're eager to get the job done. But unlike the more hyper-focused D style, dominant and driven, they will want to have fun in the process. Their most likely communication style is really this persuasive and influencing style. And an I person will wear their heart on their sleeve, and they are likely to use lots of expressive body language. They'll be animated, enthusiastic, and energizing. However, because they are people orientated, they want to be liked and crave recognition. So they might hold back on making unpopular decisions. They are the big picture people who shy away from complexity, and a result of that might mean they lack a bit of attention to detail. Okay, so let's now think about the S style, the steady and secure people. They are more reserved than the I's, and they are more wired for people. They're stable and supportive and like to keep themselves on an even keel and make sure everyone is happy. Their preference is to organize everything. As they don't like conflict, they will want to preserve the status quo. As someone who always puts others first, their most likely communication style is to listen. They don't want to upset the apple cart with a sort of destructively strong opinion. When you meet an S-type person, you'll be struck by their friendly and sincere body language and their easygoing nature. They'll probably ask you lots of questions because they're genuinely interested in you. They're always very diplomatic and they avoid confrontation wherever possible, as they don't really like change or taking risks. They want to be accepted, so on occasion they may be a little bit oversensitive or may have a tendency to take things personally, and maybe too personally. And they really don't like being put under pressure. And finally, the C style, compliant and considered. They are also more reserved folk with a preference for task processes and details. Picture people you know who are motivated by process and procedure. They need to have a system in place and will be keen to point out the rules to others. They're really conscientious and detailed, and quality is really important to them. Their preference is probably to communicate in writing, as this will allow them time to make sure everything is accurate and precise. The C types are the hardest to read because they won't show their feelings. They'll be questioning and want to understand all of the details so that they can use all the evidence available to help them make the right decision. They can be perfectionists and they worry about being criticised and find it difficult to work with people that don't stick to the rules. A great way of helping you fully understand how this translates into different communication, translates into different communication styles, is to just imagine yourself in an elevator, a lift with a group of people. So picture the scene. The D styles will be really determined in their entrance, and they will purposefully hit the closed door button as they get in the lift. Whereas the I types won't be able to help themselves having a conversation about maybe the weather or the football last night. But the S types will be patiently holding the door open, making sure there's room for everybody, and the person coming down the corridor can make the lift on time. But the C types will be busy calculating the weight of everyone in the elevator to make sure that we haven't gone over capacity and the lift isn't going to crash down to the basement. You know, by recognizing other people's styles and taking into consideration that most of us are likely to be a blend of styles, you'll be more informed about how they will make a decision. And this can be invaluable in finding out the best way of influencing someone. So from your very first interaction with them, try and notice whether you think they're more outgoing or more reserved. If your first contact with them is via email, or did they pick up the phone and talk to you in person? It's actually quite interesting to realise that you'll find it easier to spot more of an outgoing person style than you will somebody who is more reserved and private. Try and see yourself as a bit of a detective gathering evidence to test your thinking. Let's maybe have a think about some famous people. Not that I've profiled any of these, of course, but my judgment would say that Donald Trump is a D. I mean, D for Donald is a bit of a giveaway. You only have to watch his performance in a press conference to observe his dominant and demanding style. Whereas somebody like Richard Branson, I think he's more of an I. He's really inspirational and he is built for fun. Maybe Boris Johnson is also an I, although I think we've seen a bit more of a D tendency lately. What about Meghan Markle? She'd be more of an S, someone who cares deeply for others. You can see that through her work with UNICEF and the way she interacts with the crowds. Although as an actress, she's clearly showing that she can be an I as well. And finally, what about Theresa May? She would most likely be more of a C style, a policymaker, very into the process and the details, not particularly outgoing. Remember the dancing queen moment at the Conservative Party conference? She looked really uncomfortable. As I was saying before, most of us are likely to be a blend of two styles, and we might occasionally exhibit three styles. Some of us, and some of you may be already thinking this, I don't want to be the style that I actually am, but you are the way that you are. You need to draw on your emotional intelligence and have the self-confidence to accept that is who you really are. This is the only way you'll be truly authentic. But this can be trickier than you think, spotting these, as the detective, spotting these different styles, because we may have three different selves. We may have a public self, a stressed self, and a core self. And sometimes you will see different things in people. So the public self is the way that you believe others see you in public. It's the public image you'd like to present to the world, and therefore it's the one that is most likely to change. The stressed self is the sort of intrinsic behavior that you would demonstrate under pressure, when your adrenaline is pumping and the primal fight or flight instinct kicks in. This will inevitably have an impact on your style, and this is least likely to change, this stressed self. And the core self, well, this is the real inner you. It's the private self, and it's the one where you feel most comfortable. And gradually this can change over time. So a valuable way and a method for differentiating between these styles is to think about how people communicate on a good day versus a bad day. It can be difficult to admit to how you behave under pressure, especially if you don't necessarily behave well in that type of situation. But it's important to remember that awareness is valuable, and the better you know yourself, the better you will become in influencing. So be open-minded, listen to the pros and cons of the different communication styles, and again, see what resonates for you. So on a good day, we should respect the value that each style brings in terms of how they communicate and how they get things done. Remember, we can all do all of these things, but we are more likely to see them from on a good day. You're more likely to see these things from people on a good day. So for example, a D style on a good day is likely to be determined and purposeful and very productive. An I style on a good day is likely to be enthusiastic and really sociable. An S style on a good day is likely to be caring and friendly, and a C style on a good day is likely to be analytical and precise. But sometimes people have a bad day. So again, as a detective, noticing these things on a bad day is important. And remember, as I describe these, I am describing the extremes. Try not to take this as a criticism of your style if I've hit a nerve. Remember, we all do have bad days. So on a bad day, a D may be controlling and aggressive. An I style may be overexcitable and frantic. An S style can be stubborn and resistant to change. And a C style can be suspicious and prickly. So now we've got a really good understanding and we can recognize the different styles and we know how to respect what the different styles bring. The next thing that we need to do is to make sure that we are responding in an appropriate way to the different styles. And it's about leaning into their style because we're trying to influence them and make it easier for them to say yes. And one of the benefits of understanding your own style is that you will recognize how it affects your relationships. So if you're a D and you know other D styles, you could get on famously because you have a similar outlook. But you could also clash horribly because you're both dominant and driven. Or for example, if you're more of a C type who's reserved and task focused, you might feel rather intimidated by outgoing I style people. The emotional glue that fuels stronger relationships, no matter what the scenario, will help you influence others more convincingly. And if you can respect their communication style, you will do better at this. So your focus should be on trying to align your style towards theirs, no matter what your style is. And that way you can build trust and respond accordingly. So when you are responding to a D style and influencing a D style to say yes to what you're asking them for, they will make their decision, their buying decision, based on quality and results. So make sure you communicate in a concise way, backing up your statements with evidence. You should stay focused. Don't be tempted to go off on a tangent. A lovely phrase to help you remember how to communicate with the D style is to be brief, be bold, be gone. Something to watch out for if you are a D style and you're influencing another D style is to let them be in control, or you'll end up at loggerheads. If you're responding and influencing an I style, they will make spontaneous decisions based on how the concept looks and feels. Remember, you need to flatter them and allow them to express themselves. Help them turn the idea into reality. Remember to build in time for discussion so that they can articulate their opinion, and make sure there is enough time for that social chit chat. And don't go into too much detail because they are likely to switch off. So if you're an I style influencing a fellow I, It is likely that you'll get on famously, but there's always the risk of not making much progress because neither of you will want to focus on the details. What about responding to an S style? So if you're influencing an S, recognize that they'll only make a decision if they've had time to confer with the other people whom will be affected by the decision and the situation. They are more likely to say yes if your concept is simple and will be valued by other people. So you need to be patient and avoid putting them under pressure. Make sure that you demonstrate that you have taken other people's points of view into consideration. And if you're also an S in style, and you're trying to influence an S, make sure that you challenge yourself not to avoid, both of you, not to avoid making a difficult decision. What about if you are responding to a C style? You should consider the fact that they will be making a methodical buying decision based on warranties, guarantees, past experience and comparisons. So you need to supply them with plenty of details so that they can consider each point. Be really specific. Give them the pros and the cons, and be careful not to be vague or gloss over the details. And try not to spring a surprise on them. Pre-reading massively helps a C style make a decision, so these really are the folk to share stuff with ahead of the conversation. Just make sure there are no mistakes in your documentation. And if you are also a C style connecting with a C, try and make sure you challenge yourself to have the conversation face to face, as you would both prefer to communicate by email, and this could mean that closure could become protracted and overcomplicated. There is a huge amount to consider about communication styles, recognizing them, respecting, flexing, situationally, etc. The more conscious you are of this, the more likely you are to fast track building rapport and connections. The stronger your relationships, the easier it will be to get stuff done. This is why there is money in emotions. Just spend a moment either now or afterwards jotting down some important people who you need to influence. Based on everything I've laid out, have an educated guess on what their style may be. Reflect on what you believe the flags or the pointers are that led you to think that this was their style. And then think about what you're going to do and not do, depending on your own style, when you're influencing them. The more you do this consciously over time, the more you will lay down new pathways, mental muscle in your brain. Eventually, you won't have to be as conscious anymore. It just will be on your radar, and it will become a way of working and behaving. I like to think of us as being human beings, not human doings. So back to the definition of influencing. The next step to becoming strong at influencing is using the insights gathered about the other person's communication style to create a really tailored story that makes it easy for them to say yes to you. The better you prepare this, the better outcomes you'll realize. All too often, we don't put enough effort into our preparation, yet we expect amazing results. As Einstein said, if you keep doing what you've always done and expect different results, you are actually insane, or words to that effect anyway. So you need to have a really clear idea on what it is that you want to achieve. I know it sounds really obvious when I put it like this, but you will be amazed how many people struggle to articulate exactly what they want to ask someone to say yes to. So it is hardly surprising that they find it difficult to win over the other person if they don't actually know in detail what it is that they're asking for. How could you possibly be sure-footed if you don't know where you're going? And it is not just enough to have a vague idea, because this could lead you to waffling on and when you open up the conversation and being weak in your call to action. You know, if you want to ask for extra budget for your department, then you really need to spell out exactly how much you want, when it's required, and what you're planning to spend it on. You also need to think about when they action or implement what you're asking them for or to do, or what you're recommending they do, you have to have considered the impact it will have and therefore the benefit to them. It could be that your ask will save them time or help them realize more return on investment, or it could save them money. In order for you to communicate that with confidence, you really need to have calculated this in advance, thinking about how they would see the impact for them. And then you need to work out exactly how you are going to ask them in the conversation. Your ask should be ambitious, so it helps them move forward or improve their situation. And it should be specific. Always include the timings. So if you want them to do it by Friday this week, you need to ask them. Otherwise, how will they know that's part of the recommendation? Always use simple language. Don't use your own acronyms or your shortcuts to communicate. And your recommendation or your ask should be short and to the point. And this will help you articulate it with confidence. Now, it may take you time to prepare it. And as Tennyson said, I'm really sorry I had to write you a 16-page letter. I didn't have time to write you a 1-page letter. Less is always more when you're influencing. So now that you know where you're headed, you really need to get ready and to take them on a journey and get ready to craft your story. Even if you feel writing a creative story isn't your forte, it is worth pointing out that we can all learn to tell a good story. It just takes practice. According to Simon Sinek, people don't buy the what, they buy the why. In explaining the why, he explains why we buy computers from Apple versus people like Dell. He argues that it's because we buy into the why of the company, their beliefs, their value system, the fact that they challenge the status quo. If we apply his theory of focusing on the why so the other party should say yes by demonstrating you can help them, this approach will fly in the face of those traditional methods which sell the what and create more of an uphill battle. So lead with that why to help you really engage the other person. Then show them how your idea will work and what needs it will deliver for them. If you build the story in this way and relate it back to their needs, you're more likely to motivate them, both on this emotional level and commercial level, if your ask is going to help them make more money or save money. Your aim here really is to make sure that everything you're asking for is a no-brainer. So when you are preparing, make sure that your story answers these questions. What's in it for them? How can I prove it? And why should they say yes? You then should apply this why, how, what philosophy to every single aspect of your idea. To give yourself the best chance to succeed, you should explain why they should say yes to the timing, why they should say yes to how many people should be involved in the project, all of that detail. So that's why preparation is everything. Now that you know your why, how, and what, and you've got it really clear in your mind, and you're going to sell and influence every aspect of your ask, you should also put some thinking time towards how you're going to bring your story to life. Because it's the why and the how and the what that will win their minds. but it's telling the story that will help you win their heart. Steve Jobs used to say, the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, the values, and the agenda for the whole generation to come. Just love that quote. And the more visual and connected you can make the story, the more powerful and effective it will be. Essentially, there are 4 really brilliant storytelling techniques that can help you build this memorable picture and support your argument or explanation. And they're on this slide on the screen. Using analogies. Another Steve Jobs example was something that he said, which really connected with me, was a computer is the equivalent of the bicycle of our minds. Using compelling parallels helps people connect with your story on an emotional level. The second one is about being clever with numbers. Always present numbers in the best way possible to support your argument. This could be making a really big number seem small, or making a really small number seem massive. For example, something like a 90-day warranty, if you want to make it seem like a smaller amount of time, just say it's 3 months, or vice versa. If you want to make it seem longer, say it's 90 days. The next one is about reiteration and repetition, such an effective way to secure a key point. You may have noticed that I use recognize, respect, and respond several times through the webinar. I'm not sure if any of you listened to Greta talking about the environment. Her talk the other day, how dare you, how dare you, how dare you. She repeated herself several times, and I certainly remember her message. And the last one is about painting a picture. Add visuals to bring your story to life, but remember they shouldn't always replace the key data and insight. Try and use pictures. Pictures really do speak 1,000 words. Now, no matter how compelling you've made your story, if you can't deliver it with confidence, then you are going to struggle to convince the other person to say yes. Choose your words carefully. Avoid what I would call weak speak, vague or hackney phrases that can undermine your credibility. You can see some common ones on the slide. When people say potentially, the other person may think, well, you're not convinced it will. If you say, hopefully we can agree, it sounds like you're not sure you're going to get agreement. If you use the words in all honesty, it may be that you're about to exaggerate. Or, believe me, this is a great idea. Sounds like even you're not sure about it. Okay, so we've got our story written. We know the why, how, what. We've thought about the person we're communicating to. We're now ready for the live conversation. I actually think the most challenging aspect of influencing is learning how to control the actual conversation, the influencing conversation. No matter how much time you've spent preparing and rehearsing, and the performing live in the moment is easy to envisage, but it's really hard to do. And I think the reason this is the case is that people are unpredictable. Despite all of your best plans, we can't know what noise and interference may be going on in the other person's head and how it might impact your conversation. So it's important to leverage your emotional intelligence to stay in control of the conversation. Broadly speaking, there are 4 types of conversational elements or interactions that you might get during the influencing conversation. They could be questions or statements. It could be curveballs designed to put you on the back foot. They could be real issues someone's got with what you're saying, or it could be people trying to negotiate with you. In your preparation, anticipate and consider what you think the likely interruptions are going to be. Forewarned really is forearmed. Then live in the conversation, your ability to think in the moment, hear, process, judge, categorize the interactions as they are taking place is what is going to help you stay in self-control. People often assume that all of the interactions are geared towards real issues, but unfortunately not everyone behaves in a principled and above board manner. So use your judgment, which is part of your emotional intelligence, to gauge whether or not you think the other person is raising a genuine concern, or are they just trying to shift the balance of power in their favor. Whatever the interruption type, it is only by responding with confidence that you can help maintain a balanced playing field. A really, really good way of improving your ability to assess the type of interaction you're going to get and the best response to give is to actually adopt the principle of plan, do, review. I would advise you to keep a record of the actual interactions that you get versus what you'd planned, and then reflect on how your responses impacted the conversation and your ability to stay in control. You might not get it right every time, but again, if you don't have to be great at this to start, but to be great, you have to start. So, in drawing this webinar to a close, I've shared with you lots and lots of practical tools, technique, and strategies. But all of these are only going to make a difference if you're able to put this practice into play for yourself and for it to become habitual. My advice would now be to try and capture some stuff immediately. Think about these three things. You know, commit onto a document at the back of your daybook or your notebook, or say out loud to a friend or a colleague your biggest learning, what you're going to do differently, and one specific action that you're going to take. I'm a massive believer in learning. I think the day you stop learning is the day you die. But I recognise for myself and for adults, it's really hard to learn new stuff. So I make a massive effort when I'm setting people up for success to make the most complicated things look easy. And I've written several books on topics that I believe make a massive difference in the workplace and generally in life. So if you wanted to find out more on emotional intelligence, I would like to introduce you to my books. If you go onto your MBA book club site, you'll be able to get a discount generously offered by LID, the publishers. And I've also included on the last slide my contact details if you wanted to have a chat with me further. The coaching book is actually out this Thursday, so you won't be able to purchase that until the 17th. Thank you very much. I'm now open to any questions.
Excellent, Nicole. That was brilliant. I'm sure the audience has got as many notes as I have in front of me. So we have had a few questions come in. So the first question is, do the styles currently being spoken about relate to the MBTI inventory?
Yes, they do. So MBTI is also based on Jungian theory, and DISC and Marston's model is based on Jungian theory as well. So it's very similar. The reason I don't use MBTI is I think it's harder to remember. It's harder for people to remember their style because there's more letters involved. So that's why I use the DISC model. But essentially, it's based on the same Jungian theory.
Excellent. So we've got some more questions. So yeah, just say to the audience, if you do have a question, feel free to send it in, and we do have a bit of time, so we hopefully can answer them all. So another question is, can my DISC style change over time?
So yeah, your DISC style can change over time, depending on the type of environment that you're in. The public self is the one that's most likely to change over time. Your core self is the one that's least likely to change. The one that is most changeable, though, is the you under pressure. But some people are what you see is what you get. So some people are really similar in each of the different situations. So, but these are preferences. They are preferences, and it's interesting to remember that we can all do all of the styles.
Perfect. Got another question. Are the I types better at influencing, given that they are persuasive?
They're naturally influencing, so they will find influencing easier. They're more likely to lean into it. But if you're not an I, it doesn't mean you can't be persuasive. So the conversation part for the I's will be easier. The preparation part will be something that they will find harder. The magic of emotional intelligence, though, is about flexing your style, no matter what your style. And an I might have to flex might have to flex further if they're trying to influence a C style. So we can all do all of these things. It's just about our preference.
Perfect. Can you view your disc style different to how others view you?
Yes, of course you can. It depends whether you've got a blind. It depends on how well you know yourself. So if you know yourself well, you may be more able to wear a mask in public. So remember, I described the 3 U's. There's the face that you wear in public. There's the stress self, and then there's the core you. So you may be able to disguise who you really are by showing people different parts of your communication style. But again, I just use the model to help people recognize preferences. Once you get to know somebody, you have to worry less about trying to figure out what style they are, because you know them. But the reason I use DISC to help people in the influencing context is it helps you fast track building that relationship.
Brilliant. Another question. I am unsure about what style I am. Is there any tests or questionnaires that I can do to find out what style I am?
If you pick up the influencing book, there's some more information about the different styles, and I ask several questions in the book, so you can start to make a judgment. But you can also do a DISC style. So whoever asked that question, if you want to get in touch with me, I can talk to you about how you can access a profile. DISC is a psychometric tool that you can use to work out what your profile is. But when you complete the profile, it will have been completed by you, so it's on what you think your style is. It's a highly validated tool, validated psychometric profile. So whoever asked that can contact me, and I can help you figure out a way forward.
Excellent. Got another question. Are there differences in DISC styles based on heritage or gender?
Not really. I like to think that people are predictably different. I run training workshops and work internationally, and sometimes people generalize and I can't think of the right word. They sort of try and put people into different boxes. These are preferences. We can all do all of these things. It's just how we prefer to do things. So yeah, I don't think there is a bias towards gender, etc. But what is interesting is we tend to have unconscious bias about what we think we are, and therefore what we think other people are. That's the bias. That's where the bias comes in. Can you spot the other person?
Brilliant. Got 2 more questions. So please explain how best we can influence aggressive employees or employees.
Say that again, Paul.
How best can we influence aggressive employers or employees?
Yeah, I mean, the aggression sounds like it could either be, you have to figure out first of all, is the aggression because they're a fundamentally different style to you, and they're not being aggressive, it's just how they're communicating and it's different to yours. Or if they are a D, remember the idea of being brief, be bold, be gone. So it might be about flexing how you approach that style, because the flag for me was the word aggressive. That sounds like a D style. If they are a D style and you've consciously thought about that, it could be that if you see them and respect that that's their style, flex your style accordingly and be brief, be bold, be gone when you're trying to influence them, you might get better outcomes. But get under the skin of what you think is causing them to be aggressive, whether it's the employee or the employer, before you go and try and build up an influencing story.
Brilliant. Okay, and the last question we have is there any difference between influencing and negotiation?
There is a massive difference. That's a great question. And I'm often asked that. Yes, there is a massive difference between influencing and negotiation, which is why I've written 2 books, one on influencing and one on negotiation. Fundamentally, influencing should be done before the negotiation takes place. So influencing is about making it easy for the other person to say yes by emotionally and, where relevant, commercially motivating the other person. Negotiation is about finding an overlap in positions, right? It's also a communication skill, but it's about finding overlap and compromise. So before you have the overlap and compromise conversation, you need to know what on earth is being discussed. So the influencing should come first. And fundamentally, they are different skills. They are both require emotional intelligence. They both are communication skills. So DISC is really relevant, but they are 2 very different parts of the conversation. So you need to know how to negotiate to get closure. So sometimes people are really strong at influencing, and then it all goes horribly wrong when it comes to the negotiation, and they can't close and they tend to give everything away. Or people who don't mind conflict or difficult conversations are good at the negotiation part, but aren't very good at building value in the other person's mind and making it an easy decision for them. So they are very, very different skills, but they do sit under the heading of, you know, how to get someone to do something that for you, and to make that stuff happen.
Excellent. Okay, so I'd just like to thank you again, Nicole, for a fantastic webinar, and thank everyone for joining us. So just some further information is that we will be sending out the recording of the webinar in the next few days. So please make sure to look out for an email from ourselves. We'll also include any information regarding how you can access and get the books which Nicole has written. Our next webinar is on the 6th of November. It's with Natasha Wallace. The subject will be Wellbeing Will Make or Break Business in the 4th Industrial Revolution. So that's taking place at 12 o'clock midday. So please head over to our website where you can register and see all the other events we're doing, all the webinars which we're doing. So I'd just like to thank Nicole again, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you.